I quit the gang life for my wife, but she lied to my face for over a decade, so I spent years taking everything from her. I was 19, and it was my first day out of jail when my girlfriend Mary sat me down. She explained that she was pregnant and it was mine. She told me she was nervous, but really wanted to keep the child. It didn't take much thought on my end. The supposed love of my life was pregnant with my child, and it was time to be a man. That was the day I quit the gang life for good, turning my back on the life that would lead to death or jail. I proposed to her soon after, and she said yes. I went to a trade school to become a mechanic, and I busted my ass for my future family. When my daughter Luna was born, it was the most intense day of my life. Mary wouldn't stop bleeding. She went into shock, and they had to give her an emergency C-section. She was in the hospital for months, eventually made a full recovery. She finally came home, and I catered to her every need for a while until she was at full strength. When Mary started feeling like herself again, Luna became my world. I wanted her life to be the best. I wanted to give her the world. When Mary was released, I promised her that our daughter will have a life far better than ours. And for years, I kept that promise. I saved enough money to move us to the suburbs, became homeowners, and I was her #1 cheerleader. I made sure Luna went to private school, made sure she knew how to defend herself, and always made sure I was the perfect husband. As the years went by, I owned my own garage. My cousin, who I considered my best friend, became a pastor, and my relationship with my wife was stronger than ever. I made sure I kept my prison body, but Luna hated me. Since she turned 13, she just started hating me. She didn't want me to hug her, rolled her eyes every time I told her I loved her, ignored me when I asked her about her day in school. It hurt me, and Mary saw it. She told me that she's a teenager and that I should just let it ride. I wanted to show her how much I loved her. So, for her quinceañera, I wanted to go all out. I got everything she wanted, and she was still disrespectful. And briefly, the old me almost came out just to put her in her place. But instead, I went to my cousin, vented my frustration and doubts about being a good father, and he told me to just let her be. And he said a prayer for me. I wanted a slideshow for the father-daughter dance, got a chunk of the pictures of us together. But I realized I didn't have any recent pictures of us. She didn't want to take any. The last time I had pictures of her and I smiling with me was on her 13th birthday, and those were on my daughter's broken tablet. I took that tablet, went to a repair shop, and I didn't care about the cost. After a day and $300, the tech fixed it, and I was happy. Little did I know that this happiness would soon be followed by the biggest heartbreak of my life. I opened her tablet, and then the instant messages appeared. It was my daughter talking to my wife. It was a long banter, that she didn't want me to dance with her, and it did hurt. Like my wife said, she's being a teenager. Then she said something that destroyed me. She texted why she had to do the father-daughter dance with me, since I'm not her father. I wasn't her father. I wasn't. I felt my heart stopped, I got dizzy, my mouth dried up, and I needed to sit down. My wife responded that I raised her, I loved her, and that makes me her father. Luna responded by saying that my cousin is her father, and she can't wait for her to turn 18, so she could tell me the truth, and she could live with her real dad, that she hated me, that she thanked God, that I'm not her father. Mary began cussing her out, saying that it was a mistake for my cousin to tell her the truth 2 years ago, and the more they talked, the angrier I got. My wife lied to me for 15 years. My cousin, whom I confide my issues about Luna and my fears about being a bad father, not only slept with my wife, but had me raise his child. I wanted to hurt them. I felt a mixture of anger, sorrow, grief. I wanted to scream, cry, and die at the same time, if that makes any sense. I went to a dark place, and so I wouldn't do anything stupid. I told Mary that I needed to focus on work so I could pay the quints, and instead I drove to Manhattan and saw my old public defender, who wasn't a low-level attorney anymore. He had a nice expensive firm near Midtown East. I was surprised that he remembered me. Apparently, I was his first case as a public defender. We sat down and I told him everything, gave him the tablet, and when he turned it on, the messages just kept coming. Only this time, Luna was talking to my cousin, her real father, and he was telling her to give me a chance, how I was always there for her. But Luna told him that so was he, how it makes sense that they have so much in common, and even called him Poppy multiple times in their conversation, and he responded and told her that she was his little girl. We went through our options and he asked me, what do I want to do? I told him that I wanted to go full scorched earth. I wanted to poison the well. And he asked me several times if that is what I wanted and nodded. I also told him that everything had to be filed before the quints in 2 weeks. So we sat down and spent the next 12 hours on what needed to be done. And I followed his instructions to the letter. I secretly placed my business for sale, called the private school, and told them that I will not be paying for next year, closed the college accounts, and the savings that I had for Luna, and prepared to place my house for sale online. No one was the wiser. I followed his instructions perfectly. Was only one thing I deviated from the day of the quince. That day went off without a hitch. The whole family was there. Luna was smiling, having fun. Mary kept asking me if I was okay, and I lied to her. It was hard lying to her. From the moment I met her, I never lied to her. And during those 2 weeks, every time I kissed her, held her, made love to her, it was hard not to scream at her. It was hard not to hate her. She knowingly let me raise another man's child. She slept with my cousin, a man who saw as my brother, the godfather of my child, the best man when I eloped. So the rage was hard to suppress, to say the least. When it was time for the father-daughter dance, I called her to the center of the stage. She looked annoyed but walked over. I had the music playing and she smiled, and it tore me apart seeing her smiling at me. For years I wanted to see that smile again, and now I didn't want it. As we danced, I had the slideshow playing, pictures of the two of us, and towards the end of the song, screenshots of her text messages with her mother and real father. Needless to say, this didn't bode too well. Mary looked like she saw a ghost. Luna just kept staring at the large screen, and my cousin just stared at me with fear. Mary ran to me and told me that she could explain, and I told her that I filed for a divorce, that she could explain it in court. She grabbed my arm, begging me, and I pulled back. I told Luna that I busted my ass to give the world, and now she doesn't deserve it. I began to walk out, but not before telling my cousin that every time I see him, I'm going to knock him out. Then, I knocked him out. The aftermath was harsh. Mary and Luna was at my grandmother's apartment. Her family was shocked and disgusted with her. They wanted nothing to do with her. My grandmother had the audacity to tell me about the story Abraham, and how when came back from battle 3 years later, his wife had a 1-year-old child, and he raised him as his own, and how I should be like Abraham. So I told her to get the hell out of my house. Mary came a few days later, crying as soon as she saw me, telling me that it was an accident, that when I was arrested she was so angry at me, and my cousin was there to console her. And one thing led to another and they slept together. It happened only one time, and she was faithful to me ever since. She was willing to take a lie detector test to prove it, so I asked her how long she knew Luna wasn't mine, and she started crying more. That look she gave me just told me that she knew from day one. Asked her to leave. She wanted to go to counseling, telling me that I'm overreacting and we could make it work. It was in the past, and I needed to get over it that I am Luna's father, despite what happened, and I allowed my temper to get the best of me. I must have repeated get over it over a dozen times at full volume while grabbing her things and tossing it out the door. I told her that I didn't want to see her face ever again, and I told her that this life that I built no longer belongs to her before shoving her out the door. Couple of weeks went by and she kept blowing up my phone. Not once Luna tried to reach out to me. Mary was shocked to learn that I sold my business, even more so when she learned that I had an open house. She came in screaming, telling the viewers to get out of her house and pleading with me to seek help, that I was ruining our marriage, that I had no right to sell our home where we raised our child in. And I told her that this house is full of lies. It's a house where I raised another man's child, and when I sell it, I will give her half, and ordered her to get out before I called the cops. Was a bluff. All she had to do was play the victim and I would have been arrested, but she didn't. She complied. Shortly after this, my cousin came to talk to me, and I knocked him out, dragged him outside, and closed the door.